this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Ilya Malinin. Redefining the sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. Loving arms. Ain't nothing like it when you're a kid. Those arms that you can rush to, that no matter what the problem is, they're going to embrace you and give you that feeling that's unlike any other, that you know, regardless of what happens, everything, and I mean everything, it's going to be okay. I've experienced it in my life. It was actually the arms of my grandmother. I knew what it was like. It was like the warmest blanket on the coldest day. But there are two kids that I've talked about before on this podcast that didn't have those loving arms. They had the arms of perhaps murderous mercenaries that they were surrounded by. Today, it's important. This is an important time because of a trial that's going on right now involving Chad Daybell. But I don't want to talk about Chad Daybell. I want to talk about, again, JJ and Tylee. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. Dave, as of this recording, I've appeared on a couple of national television shows within the last 24 hours. And the reason I was asked to join those shows was because a huge bit of forensic evidence was revealed in the ongoing trial of Daybell in regards to 3 homicides that he has, that prosecution says he has direct involvement in. And Dave, I got to tell you, I almost wept on air on Court TV just last night because there was news that was revealed yesterday about JJ and a little bit more about Tylee and what they went through, and also what was found in the wake of, I don't know how to describe it other than desecration, the desecration of their remains out there in Rexburg, Idaho. I don't know. I know you were shocked when I kind of revealed this to you.
Yes,
and it takes a lot to shock you. I know.
Joe and I were sitting here working on a couple things, and you matter-of-factly told me about this whole story. I have followed JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan and Tammy Daybell, but we have followed this story since it began when JJ and Tylee were missing. That's how long we have been on this story, since before Lori Vallow married Chad Daybell.
Yep.
And we have done a number of stories with Nancy. We've done a number here. The bottom line on this particular episode, we're going to assume that you know the story of what happened with Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow. And I encourage you, if you don't know it, you can look back at previous episodes here. You can look at episodes of Nancy Grace. East Idaho News has done a phenomenal job covering the case.
Yep.
Just can't say enough good about what they've done in terms of the coverage. But here's your bottom line.
Our boy, I'm going to do a shout out here. Our boy Nate Eaton.
Yes, Nate.
He might be, out of everybody, I've never seen a career that came around like his, and it came around as a result of these cases specifically. Mm-hmm. And boy, what a job he has done. Just,
I will tell you, you have to have talent and skill to take advantage of something that's dropped in your lap like this story was. But Nate Eaton is the reason we know about it. Nate Eaton is the one who followed it. Nate's the one who broke the story. But your bottom line, the overview is Chad Daybell married to Tammy Daybell for 28 years. Lori Vallow has been married to several men. Lori Vallow was married to Charles Vallow. Charles was murdered by Lori Vallow's brother, Alex. And as soon as Charles Vallow was dead, Lori Vallow moved with her 16-year-old daughter, Tylee, and her 7-year-old son, JJ, and moved to Rexburg, where Chad Daybell was still married and living with his wife, Tammy. I say still because that was the plan all along, was that Lori would get rid of her husband, Chad would get rid of his wife, they would get married and live happily ever after. With no children, by the way. That means JJ and Tylee both had to go, too. That is the thumbnail sketch. But what we're here to talk about today is JJ and Tylee. You and I both did shows right when their bodies were discovered.
Yep.
They had been missing and presumed dead. There was plenty of evidence to show that they were probably no longer with us. The day that they were found in Chad Daybell's backyard was a shocking day. I didn't know how much more we could be shocked until they started talking about the autopsies.
I didn't, and this is one of these things that, as a former death investigator, forensic scientist, college professor, podcast host, you think that there's nothing else to be revealed. You think that every stone has been overturned, if you will.
I did until today.
Yeah, I did. I didn't see this coming, and I think that what's important here, and I'll try to keep this brief, is that when we in forensics go into a courtroom after we've done an assessment of whatever the evidence, whether the evidence is human remains or it's fiber evidence or tool mark or tire track or fingerprint or whatever it is, we are compelled to tell the truth, not just morally, but legally. And we try to stay within our guardrails. All right. And I saw something that really gave me pause when I was reviewing this case. And that was a testimony of the pathologist that actually was tasked with doing the examination on both of these kids. And again, I want to mention his name so that everybody remembers it. All right. And that's Dr. Garth Warren. And what he observed, let me talk to you as an academic right now. What he observed and what he annotated in his findings, this is the kind of case, these cases will be cases that will be used in the future to teach with, okay? Because they're so markedly complex. And even though these two victims are buried, I guess we could say, within close proximity of one another,
the same property.
Same property. And you could, if you were standing at JJ's grave, you could look over and see where Tylee's remains were found. But they're two very distinctly different events.
Totally different.
Completely. And if I were a profiler, which I am not and have no desire to be, I would think that there would be quite a bit of data there to go through and kind of assess, just based on the burials themselves, what type of person you're dealing with. What was going on in their mind? We hear a lot about organized versus disorganized crimes or events, and that generally applies to serial killers. But you can still have that as part of the profile when you're talking about an isolated event like this. What do you make of it? Because if you're the pathologist and you're trying to look for commonalities when you're working two cases which you think are connected somehow, the police are going to be staring you down, man. They're going to be looking at you and they're going to say, hey, look, is there anything here that you can see that there is something in common with these events where we've got an idea that the same perpetrator was involved? I got to tell you, it ain't much. It ain't much. The only thing that we have is geographic proximity.
and familial, and they are family.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Familial relationship here between these two. That in and of itself, and again, we go back to this idea of the circle, that these kids are contained in. And ain't much happening in Rexburg. All right. It's not the crime capital of the world.
Idaho's becoming that.
Oh boy. Yeah. When
serious.
You look at Tammy Daybell, and you look at, God rest her soul. And then you look at JJ and Tylee. What are the odds, that you're going to have three, three people that either, I think that we can safely say met their ends at that location. What are the odds that's going to happen in that faraway place?
When we watched JJ and Tylee, their remains coming out of the ground, and totally different. The way they were packaged at death, totally different.
Yes.
Now, I want to put Tammy Daybell in her proper place right now and just say, look, Tammy Daybell was married to Chad Daybell for 28 years. She was in his way to get married to Lori Vallow. He had to get rid of her. She died, and she died October 19th. Her funeral was 3 days later. Less than 2 weeks after that, he was married to Lori Vallow.
Yeah.
And it was in December 11th, when there was enough chatter going on around Rexburg about the relationship between Lori and Chad, and the fact that her children, JJ and Tylee, were missing at that point.
Yep.
That there was enough interest in the story that they exhumed Tammy Daybell's body. She supposedly died a natural death. Her family said she'd been in poor health. That was actually going against what her friends said, that she was training for a marathon. On the one hand, your friends and people who know you and see you every day say you're training for a marathon, but children who are no longer living in the house with you believe their father, who said, she was really sick and died in her sleep. And of course, didn't want to have an autopsy. So her body's exhumed.
Yeah. Can I tell you about Tammy real quick?
Yeah.
With Tammy, Kim, my wife, Kim, and I, we've followed this, these cases together, and she'll hear what I'm talking about and all that stuff. And of course, she's compelled to dig into it. And when she found out that Tammy had actually been a media specialist in schools, and Kim's a retired teacher, and she was heavily dependent upon people, what used to be called a librarian,
right?
The media specialist, and her best friend is a former media specialist, and so there was like a connection there. And as time went by, we came to like Tammy. It's almost like if you knew her, it seems like she'd be somebody you'd want to sit down and have a cup of coffee with or just chat with. She seems like, like this saintly woman that's walking the earth that helps everybody. The kids went on and on. Her colleagues went on and on. But here's the thing, Dave. Here's the thing. That morning when they found Tammy and she's there in that bedroom, I knew something was up. And this is why, because when the story began to come out, and I heard that she had this kind of pink, frothy cone that was issuing from her nose and her mouth, I knew that was anything but natural.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Ilya Malinin.
Redefining this sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
No answers. No answers at all. As a matter of fact, Tammy Daybell took answers to her grave. And I think that the speed with which that was done is indicative of this case, cases in their totality. Because it's really if you're an investigator, it's really, really tough to look for evidence at a crime scene if you're sprinting over the surface of the crime scene as opposed to half stepping it. And that's what happened with Tammy. Tammy's body was embalmed, and she was taken out of state, Dave, and buried in Utah. And it took a while. They had to get an order of exhumation, and then the people in Idaho didn't do the examination on her. These are the people in Utah with the Utah State ME's office down there, which is a fine organization. And they concluded that she did, in fact, die as a result of asphyxia.
Now,
asphyxia. This mama died in her bedroom as a result of asphyxia.
Does that mean that a pillow was put over her face, that she was strangled? When I hear asphyxia, okay, I'm just a regular Joe. I don't know. Are there optional ways that somebody can be asphyxiated?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah. You've got any number of ways. When you say asphyxia, that means that you're being deprived of oxygen.
Okay. So holding your jaw shut and putting my hand over your nose where you can't. That's
an asphyxial death.
Okay.
That would be, I guess that would be considered probably, that's a unique thing. I've never thought about that. That could be classified probably as a suffocation or maybe even a smothering. Smothering is generally associated with a pillow,
right?
That's classically. And then you've got R.P.
McMurphy in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Chief holding the pillow over his head.
Holding the pillow over his face.
Okay.
What an incredible scene that was in that movie. But yeah, you got that plastic bag, or then it can go to a ligature strangulation. So you've got all of these things, or choking, perhaps, and I mean external, like strangulation. Right?
Yeah. Okay. Would that be ruled differently? A strangulation different than an asphyxial death? I'm just curious.
In my estimation, they're all asphyxial deaths because when they are being asphyxiated, you're depriving them of oxygen, and it can be a mechanical event. Like with a ligature, doctors will refer to that as a mechanical asphyxiation. Mm-hmm. You can have compression asphyxiation, where you literally have somebody sitting on someone's chest or literally holding their body weight over somebody's face.
Okay.
There's a myriad of these things, and they extend. And you can have oxygen deprivation by being closed in a small contained space where you consume all of the oxygen in there. And, people die in grain silos as well because there's an absence of oxygen.
All right. Now, with Tammy Daybell, wasn't there, you mentioned the frothiness, the foam that she had at her death. But I read on Daybell's autopsy on December 11th that she still had some foam and froth in her lungs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Do you know why that's happening?
No.
We see it.
I would have thought it would have gone away.
No, no, you could still see it. And that's interesting because she'd been involved.
Right.
So there's still evidence of it, and they found that. I would imagine that was discovered. I guess they could see it with the unaided eye, but what's really going to be the tail of the tape with her is going to be the microscopic slides. Because this is a very violent event, and it's like in a microcosm. It's happening in a very tight space like this, and somebody's preventing you from being able to breathe. And we've all experienced not being able to breathe, at some point in time, whether you had a big brother or if you're, you wake up with a start in the middle of the night and you can't catch your breath, that happens. There's any number of times, that this can occur. But does that lead us to this idea that, for me, the specter kind of raises its head with the death of Tammy, and those kids are missing?
Yes.
And you're thinking about lightning striking, right? Mm-hmm. What's the chances?
What are the odds?
What's the chances, baby? That's going to happen 3 times. And the fact that here's the thing. I don't know if it's possible because I ain't never been to the house. However, I wonder if you could actually stand in Tammy Daybell's bedroom, open up the blinds on that windowsill that she's got in there, and look out and see the area where those bodies are buried. That's a chilling thought when you think about it. All of this in proximity to one another, availability, opportunity, access. access. Access is the big thing with all of these deaths. Who has access to somebody's wife in bed, in their domicile? Who has access to these kids? Who has the opportunity with these kids? That's what the prosecution is looking at. And so when the bodies of JJ and Tylee are found, oh boy, it's on at that point in time. It's on.
Tylee Ryan's body was found at a place in the backyard of, you mentioned Tammy Daybell in her bedroom, and looking out over their burn pit, which is where they had a burn pit area and they had a pet cemetery.
Yeah.
And there's one interesting thing that tied back to all this. Alex Cox, that is Lori Vallow's brother who worshipped her. Alex was still alive at the time. And around the last time that Tylee Ryan was seen, after she was last seen, it was amazing how Alex Cox's phone put him in Chad Daybell's backyard. And at the same time, Chad Daybell sends a text to his wife about shooting a raccoon out in the backyard and having to, he was using the burn pile, shot a raccoon, which they don't come out during the day. And so if she heard anything or smelled anything weird, that's what she was smelling. Now, we'll get back to the burn pit and what was found in this burn pit area in just a minute, but I really need to get to JJ Vallow, because the last thing we have from JJ Vallow, 7 years old, and I remember the story that Alex Cox, his uncle, was carrying JJ asleep up to bed the last time he was seen alive by people other than those who were into his demise. I thought JJ might very well have been drugged and was out then, Joe. Until what you told me today, I thought JJ Vallow's death was peaceful, as much as it can be for a 7-year-old. But now I know what forensic pathologist Garth Warren shared at trial, that you're going to explain he was not asleep or dead at that time in Alex's arms.
No. And you know why you said that? You know why you thought that? Because you had a sliver of hope in all of this horror. But let me tell you something. If we are to understand correctly what Dr. Garth Warren is saying here, JJ's death was something almost unfathomable as to the level of horror that this child experienced.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Ilya Malinin.
Redefining the sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
The thing about folks in my field is, and I think people call it a trope. I've never really known what a trope is, but I think that's what they call a trope. I'm not really sure. The old adage is that we speak for those who can no longer speak for themselves. And people just kind of, when you go to conferences and you see things, people throw that term out a lot. I've been guilty of it. Chief among sinners here. But what I witnessed, Dave, on the stand with Dr. Warren was a man putting his money where his mouth is. He painted a picture up there on the stand of what these kids went through, just having to discuss the lengths that he had to go to with their deaths. And I know that we want to talk about JJ, but just so that folks understand, he talked about Tylee too in the burn pit. And they had a a heck of a job to have to undertake. Dave, let me put it to you this way: her quote unquote autopsy that took place on her remains took days. DAYS, days, plural. It took
Understand,
days.
it took 2 hours to do Tammy Daybell's autopsy. It took a day to do JJ's, and now you're talking a week.
Yeah, it took days because she came in, her mortal remains came in individual bags, not just a body bag, but a body bag containing multiple bags. And it's everything that they had collected. And Dave, according to what Dr. Warren had stated, there were particulate remains throughout. And let me give you a kind of a brief overview. What he talked about is that he had multiple skeletal remains, which you would expect after this period of time, and plus being subjected to fire. And he talked about the fire. He talked about how these are obviously charred remains. But Dave, can you believe this? There was still soft tissue. There was still soft tissue with her, and he described it as being, I want to get his words right. I think he used the word shrunken. And what that means is, so when you see remains like this, and they've been burned, you talk about how the remains become dehydrated, obviously because of direct heat, but also there's a process that goes on after death with remains, particularly when they're separated from the whole, when you have they're particulated and all out. There's a process that takes place where you have this dehydration of remains, and it actually is a term that's referred to as desiccation. So desiccation happens, and the remains, the tissue, the soft tissue is so contracted that when you see it, you look at it and you say, you know what, that is tissue. I don't know which muscle group it's from. I don't know if it's from the thigh, the calf. I don't know if it's from the bicep, the tricep, wherever, but you know that it's soft tissue. But she was so fragmented that they could not come up with a specific cause of death for Tylee. All they could say is that it is a homicide and that it's homicidal violence. We've heard that term a lot. And her body was desecrated. I've touched on this in the past, but he confirmed this. Dr. Warren confirmed this. Her body was desecrated after death in the post-mortem state.
Mean?
What it means is that somebody took sharp, heavy tools and stirred the fire with them and chopped her body up. She's got extensive injuries. They're talking about, I think, if I'm not mistaken, there was a shovel found, and this ties Alex and Chad Daybell together at that location. They found a shovel there that had her DNA on it. So if you're stirring a fire and nobody's ever stirred a fire and you're turning it, you have to spin it over. But if you're trying to get rid of a human remain, you're chopping, because in your mind you're thinking, okay, the smaller I can make this, the easier it is to burn. Let that just sink in and kind of drip down into your groundwater there just for a second. When you begin to think about whoever is tending to this fire, standing over this little girl, I'm an old guy. She's a little girl to me, and she's somebody's little girl, and she is there having been burned, and you've got somebody over her with these tools that are trying to break her up to the point where she's more manageable in the superheated environment where they're trying to render her down till there's nothing left. And the problem is that what else do you have to examine when it comes to Tylee? Because if you're trying to determine what exactly killed her, then you don't really have anything else left to hang your hat on. And that becomes problematic, particularly when the police are looking at this case. But we have to go literally across the pasture at this point in time and begin to think about, what did they find with JJ? Well, we do know that Dr. Warren actually found, when he received JJ's remains, Dr. Warren actually discovered that the body was essentially neatly packaged in bags, secured with duct tape externally, that JJ apparently had had duct tape over his mouth. His wrists are bound with duct tape. His ankles are bound with duct tape. But the most telling thing about this, and this is where the true horror comes in, is that what Dr. Warren described was the fact that during the course of this thing, at some point in time, JJ had scratches on his neck. Now, what can be implied by that? Well, Dr. Warren believes that there is a possibility that JJ had enough awareness where he is trying with his bound hands in front of him, by the way, trying to reach up, perhaps in a confined space, perhaps even buried already. He comes to, and he's trying to get the bag off of his head. Now, these scratches were located on his neck, and the way Dr. Warren described it, it was as if he were attempting to peel the bag off. And here's the key. These scratches are not post-mortem injuries. Dr. Warren actually noted in his examination that there was indwelling hemorrhage in the scratch marks along this child's neck. So that leads us to believe that JJ, contrary to what people may have thought, was not, quote unquote, knocked out. He was there, present in the moment, that as he was dying, he was trying to catch his breath with everything that was within him, trying to seek out oxygen any way he could. But yet there he was, buried, perhaps already, trying to get that bag off of his head. But it wouldn't work. He ran out of oxygen. He died. This is anything but merciful. It's anything but humane. I don't know how we can kind of do the calculus in our mind to understand the depths to which people will go, but I do know this. I do know that justice, whatever that means, is coming, and there is a reckoning coming. Let's wait and see how this one's going to play out. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
This February, Aldous Hodge returns as Alex Cross, your favorite detective on television, for Season 2 of the hit show Cross, premiering February 11th exclusively on Prime Video. Fresh off his capture of the infamous serial killer The Fanboy, Cross teams up with the FBI to hunt down a vigilante serial killer targeting corrupt billionaires. As the case unfolds, Cross navigates a moral crossroads where the lines between justice and vengeance are blurred. Catch Season 2 of Cross, with new episodes dropping weekly starting February 11th, only on Prime Video.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.